Look, I've never played the game Dungeons and Dragons, so I wasn't really looking forward to this movie all that much. Coming out of it though, much to my surprise, it's not that bad. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Regé-Jean Page, Sophia Lillis, and Justice Smith. And it tells the story of a charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers embarking on an epic quest to retrieve a lost relic, but things go dangerously awry when they run afoul of the wrong people. Now, like I mentioned in the intro of this video, I wasn't really looking forward to this movie, straight up because I haven't played the game before. I'm not really familiar with the source material. The only thing I really knew about it was that it's like a fantasy adventure game in the genre. I know it has a huge fan base, but I'm just not really in that fan base. And I probably wouldn't have checked it out if I didn't review movies. So I figured, you know what, I'm gonna give this movie a shot, and coming out of it, I'm pretty surprised. It's a fun time at the movies, and fantasy lovers, they're gonna love this one. But before we get more into my in-depth thoughts on this movie, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and comment down below what are your thoughts or expectations for Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. But let's keep talking about the movie. Now, I could compare this movie to a bunch of other movies in the fantasy genre, not just because it takes inspiration from those movies in some aspects, but also it just captures that adventure element that you want to see in fantasy movies like this. The first movie that came to mind while watching this movie, I felt like I was watching a Lord of the Rings-esque spin-off in a way. Similar to Lord of the Rings, this movie has a great ensemble and enjoyable characters. Chris Pine, who is a Chris that I feel often gets forgotten amongst the many Chris's in Hollywood. He is a fun leading man in this movie. He fit the role very well, and I enjoyed what he brought to the movie, some comedic lines. He was probably my favorite of the cast here. Not to say that the other cast members are bad by any means, but he was just the one that stood out the most. Almost all of the cast members get their moment to shine. Maybe their characters aren't the greatest though, I will say that. They're not very fleshed out as a whole. Some of them are more fleshed out than others, but it's a cast that is very charming, so it's easy to go on this adventure with them. The movie is funny. There are a lot of laugh out loud moments, not like really laughing out loud moments. I find that it's important to separate how much you're laughing out loud. But this movie is from the writer and directors of Game Night, which is a movie that I love. I find that movie to be hilarious. And they are clearly fans of Dungeons and Dragons. They sprinkle some Dungeons and Dragon isms in this movie from what I've heard. I, of course, can't really compare it to the source material as I've never played the game before. Even just hearing other audience members' thoughts on this movie walking out of it, it sounded like they were entertained by it and enjoyed what it carried over from the game to the movie. One thing that stood out to me while you're on this adventure in this movie is that there is some incredible scenery and great production design. They really utilized the scenery well, and it leads to some great action set pieces also, because I thought while there weren't too many action sequences in this movie, they were solid for the most part, and I was enjoying myself while watching them. There's a couple awesome moments where the camera really gets to shine following the characters while they're interacting and fighting against the villains or foes, whatever you want to call them. There's one great tracking shot that I definitely enjoyed. There's also a very surprising cameo in this movie that I won't spoil, but if you're paying close attention, it's fairly earlier on in the movie, you'll pick up on the familiar face, who is a very well-known actor, I feel. Plus, there are some horror elements sprinkled throughout this movie as well. There were some pretty young kids at my screening, and I would just say that be advised, this movie has some creepy elements to it. If you have younger kids or you're considering taking someone younger than you to go see the movie, just be advised of the fact that it can get pretty creepy. The movie has heartfelt moments. I would have liked a little bit more from the writing to get me even more attached to the characters, like I briefly mentioned, but for the moments that are supposed to tug on the heartstrings, they work. I think where Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves falls short of being particularly great though, is that this movie is just overly long. It's nearly 2 hours and 20 minutes and it did not need to be that long. While I didn't dislike Regé-Jean Page's character in this movie, his addition in the movie, you could probably take it out. There's like an extra 20 minutes that don't really feel needed with his character. The movie also just drags at times, especially in the second act. It's also just predictable. I pretty much called all the key moments that were gonna happen. And the villain of this movie, who I don't even remember what their name was, they are horrible, paper thin. It reminded me a lot of Black Adam's villain, which kind of feels like a weird comparison, but I just remember that villain being terrible, and I'm gonna remember the villain in this movie being terrible because there's nothing to them. Kind of just there to impose a menacing threat, but they don't really end up imposing a menacing threat because there's not much to depth-wise their character. So they looked creepy, but I wasn't really scared of them. Other than that though, I feel like Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves delivers on being an enjoyable adventure and fun time at the movies. I feel like this is one that families are going to enjoy, very similar to the newer Jumanji movies. The cast is great and charming. There's a lot of funny moments. I like the action and a little bit of sprinkled horror elements throughout. I would just assume, and take this with a grain of salt, that if you're a fan of the Dungeons & Dragons lore and the whole universe, or a fan of the game, I think you're gonna like this movie. I'm gonna give Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves a B. There are plenty of worse ways to spend 2 hours of your life. I don't think this one is particularly going to stick with me for that long, but I didn't hate my time with it by any means. But I want to know, what did you think of Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves? If you've seen the movie, or also if you're looking forward to it, let me know all that and more down below. I want to thank you so much for watching this review, and again, if you did enjoy it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as well as that notification bell so you don't miss any further videos. And as always, look forward to more videos and reviews coming soon. My name is Ben, people call me Meter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.